When I was in university, we had a student exchange for a week in Turin, in Italy, north of Italy. And one of the students took us, all 20 of us, to his grandma, who lived in a small village outside of the city. And she had a long table, 3 or 4 huge bowls of spaghetti, and she gave us all the love in spaghetti. So we started
Wow.
eating it. And obviously, we didn't know how to eat spaghetti, and there were some white shirts around. So we struggled and we were embarrassed. The Italians just laughed quietly until
Yeah.
3 Swedish men or young men, students, started cutting up the spaghetti.
No.
Absolutely
No.
improper, and you can't do that in Italy. So the impact of that action was none of the Italians talked to the 3 Swedish guys.
Welcome to Slideshow. My name is Dave Hayward and I'm the founder of Europa Creative Partners. Very excited about this episode's guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Laz Csite, but I decided to call myself or ask people to call me Laz. I'm the founder of 360 Tuned. We would like to be helping non-profit social enterprises, big corporations, so mission-led teams to deliver the profound lasting change. And we want to really empower the people to do their jobs well with using the tools available. So want to demystify digital, which is usually is like a big hoo-ha, and it's actually really profoundly simple if we go to the deep.
One of the things I love about working with you and interacting with you is that there's more. This is more than a business. What you're actually about is purpose-led. You're a purpose-led entrepreneur, essentially. When you talk to customers about profound, lasting change, what's their reaction? How do they take it? Because it's such a big, bold statement.
Yes, but we like working with board leaders, so that's almost like a pre-selection. So
Yeah.
if you are here just for surface cleaning, you want to please the board as a CEO of a non-profit, there is many other companies who can help to look good and to
Yeah.
create slides that actually applicable to the board. We really would like to serve the communities from the ground up. And that
Yeah.
means that when there's 2 types of reaction. The board leaders nod and say, yes, that's why I'm here. I could be somewhere else earning twice as much. Usually CEOs in nonprofits, usually they are corporate refugees. They had a fantastic career either at consulting or delivery or different industries, and they choose to come to nonprofit to lead a nonprofit because they are mission driven and legacy driven. So they nod and say, yep, okay, bring it on. Finally, someone who can help me with my own legacy. It's personal, but not ego driven. They want to have their customers, not just the customers as partners, but the community who they deliver to. So they're usually very motivated and they like this kind of positioning. And there's the others who are a bit scared and they say,
Yeah.
can we just do some small pilot with very limited budget? And of course, we say yes, but I always try to wind them up to actually think longer and do bigger and do deeper. So I've been in the industry for many decades, and I realize just lip service and high level changes are not enough to actually make work really visible and very important that the customers and the people community who we work with, they can see that change. So that's why profound, lasting change, deep. And just like these terraces, the nature gave us and the world gave us so many opportunities, but humans can shape these terraces to be useful. And you see these rice terraces are profoundly changed for the productivity and by the productivity of humans. So I really appreciate nature, and I think nature can teach us a lot. And there's board leaders, even in New Zealand, Australia, APAC, who want to do change. You don't have to live in a big country to make meaningful change.
I guess it's that kind of philosophy of dream big but start with small practical steps. It seems to be. And there's a step metaphor here in this visual that you've got.
Yes, and completely agree. Big transformations are more consistent, small 1% a day changes. So this rice terrace didn't look like this at the beginning. There was a lonely farmer who bought it very cheap, I assume, and then
Yeah.
started helping shape the landscape. And this is how we work as well, slow and detailed, but then slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So transforming the terraces to be basically growing rice is really practical, really useful. And
Yeah.
that's why I like this kind of nature-oriented but human designed and human practical. It's like humans can do so much with nature, respecting nature, but also enhancing it.
It's interesting because obviously you're a digital transformation expert, and sometimes that stuff feels a million miles away from touching grass. And
Yeah. Yes.
yeah, so it's such a nice metaphor and such a nice way of framing it. So why don't we get into who you are, a bit about your background, Laz?
Yes. Absolutely. So just like these people, I grew up in a small village back in Hungary in the 80s and 90s. And networking means neighborhood was very important. We did a lot of things manually. I just had a bicycle and quite a few cousins, luckily in the same street, a good few good friends. And just like people in Asia, we lived a very simple life in a small village in socialist Hungary. Then I grew up and immediately took on an IT degree and then an MBA really quickly because I really wanted to travel. And instead of being locked into our little crafts room like these people in their workshop, I just wanted to see the world. So I joined KPMG, they trained me and became a management consultant and joined PwC in London. And they sent me to different places in Europe and USA. And I could see the Western world, the differences. So fantastic commercial and capitalist, but I think I was hoping we could keep that socialist aspect as well to look after the people. So at the end, when I got married and had a 1-year-old beautiful young daughter, with my wife we moved to New Zealand to focus on our lifestyle, our children, and give them the best childhood possible. And we've been to many playgrounds, regional parks, beaches, and New Zealand became home after being here 2 years. That was the plan. We've been here for 17 years, and
Wow.
obviously it became really immersive experience. My older daughter back to Europe studying, and a few years ago, 3 years ago, I decided between 50 and 60 years old of my age, I would dedicate 10 years of my life to social enterprises, nonprofits, big corporations, basically mission-led organizations. From the frustration of seeing big companies spending so much money worldwide in Europe, in the US, and in New Zealand, Australia, and I couldn't attribute money to success. I wanted to see who we serve, who we help, and it wasn't really a burnout. It was more an ambition. Let's work for people who make changes for other people or the planet. And I believe that the planet cannot be saved or doesn't need saving. Actually, we have people, and people will have the planet. So that's why I thought, let's start a new agency, new company, new consultancy, or new coaching business, still forming. And my personal motivation is really to make a meaningful change. When I'm 60, I want to look back really satisfied, maybe not happy, but peaceful.
Yeah, contented but not satisfied necessarily. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
lot to do. Yeah.
So what we talked about before the show was that your core audience, you work exclusively with mission-led organizations, and primarily that means not-for-profits. And in the course of your work, a lot of challenges that these people are typically seeing, and we were going to talk through that. So maybe let's jump into what you're
Yeah.
thinking around those challenges.
Yes. Absolutely. So on the right, you can see a big hand trying to help, but it's out of context. And many non-profit social enterprises, even big corporations, but even profit-oriented, purpose-driven companies have a lot of hands, support, manual work. They really, in non-profits, I see a lot of people who want to serve others, but it's not as useful as it seems. A big hand, put a hand on the beach or with the wood. I think On the execution, on the right side, people are not as organized in these teams as they could be. I've seen big organizations, it's possible to run a team of hundreds. And on the left, the smoke and mirror means, for me, it's not an overall critique, it's just an observation. There's a lot of strategies which reflect the current leadership that actually just not giving enough context to deliver the details. So there is a disconnect. It looks great on paper. It's fantastic on slides. It's on the shelf, and the board approved the slides and the board approved the strategy. And the people from bottom up, the grassroots, the communities, the internal, the leaders who serve the community day to day, they actually don't know how to connect strategy and deliver as results. And therefore we can't measure it back. So it becomes like smoke and mirror, just believe us, this strategy will change the world. And on the other side, the people don't really know how to execute. So that's where we want to bridge from left to right.
In a way, what you're talking about is a connective tissue between strategic vision and feasibility, tactical execution, essentially.
Exactly. So our typical entry is a digital review because they don't know exactly where they are. So strategy doesn't mean inventory. And we give it black and white. It's like good, bad, or ugly. I usually package it nicely and politely, but we go into first people, review the people capabilities and capacity. Usually capabilities are there or can be improved with coaching and education and enablement. Capacity is the impact, unfortunately, on processes. So if they don't organize themselves well, there's not enough capacity. There's never enough people firefight. So the CEOs have a strategy which the board approved, but they don't find a capacity to deliver the strategy. And in our assessment, we go into systems as well, and many licenses don't serve a purpose just because it was useful 3-5 years ago. Every month, I would say every quarter, we would need to review, are we having the right type of people, FTEs, but it's really about individual persons, and are we having the right portfolio of tools? And these two conflict with each other because you have to sacrifice and have a project to implement tools. But the initial challenge is the CEO doesn't see what's possible and what's real.
Yeah, so there's a feasibility issue really around the technology, around understanding what works. How much is AI figuring into all of this? Is that consistent with what you're seeing with not-for-profits, or are they actually a step back from AI transformation, still very much in digital transformation?
Yes, that's exactly what I see. They are usually on stage 1 or 2 in digital transformation, means in an exponential curve, they are really in the slow, steady, and not high output, not high performance, but they can go there into the linear phase and be in exponential, but they want to do AI, the exponential right now. So usually we say, and you will see in another photo, we call it a black Toyota Corolla. They are not ready for AI. They don't have clean data. They don't have systems talking to each other, and they don't always have people talking the right way to each other. That regular self-assessment, processes, repeatability. So it might seem like a technocrat or an engineer, but I actually love teamwork, and that's what I hate most when we don't play the game. We don't define what is the game. So again, smoke and mirrors. On paper, we play rugby, but we have tennis balls and tennis rackets with us, and some people just don't play the same game. So connection and good old traditional, that's why we go back to nature and communities. It's been with us for thousands of years. Communities sharing work and getting results. And I think AI is not ready to give us accelerated results until we really strongly decide what's outside. Saying no is more important than saying yes. Too easy to say yes, isn't it? If you say nine or 8 or 9 no's, which I don't do, I have to practice, but I see CFOs, CEOs, so operational leaders, marketing leaders, sales leaders, fundraising leaders, they try to do too much and they believe AI would accelerate it. But without aiming and direction and a deep preparation, AI will take you there faster to the incorrect place.
Yeah, nice. So what's the next slide? I think we've covered operations. What have we got
Yeah,
next?
exactly. The other challenge I see almost in every nonprofit that they collect data separately. So all of these logs with all the history that the tree has been growing, these are different systems. They don't talk to each other, but this could be different teams. They could just sit one side. Sometimes we call it donor experience or relationship management, marketing, sales. There's finance, definitely another big siloed operation. And I think it's important to understand what's inside in each of these data silos and what's useful and what's not useful. So we go into reviewing, challenging them, reviewing the data quality, challenging them and asking, is this really what you need to store? Because at the top, it's really who are the people we want to remember and what are the promises we want to keep. So the second biggest issue I see is that they store data, they have systems, they have people, a lot of content, they send emails back and forth. They're all busy building their own little circles around their functional goals, but the overarching strategy to make it useful, like a wooden furniture, all these logs would need to help each other as to have the intellectual decision really at the center as a great balanced scorecard or balanced decision set.
So I guess what you're talking about is relatively common, and it's interesting that your studio focuses on it because it's very common in business intelligence, for example, to talk about data lakes and all that stuff. And what it seems to me is that if you don't get the foundations right, then you're building a house on sand, and the data is the foundations. That's the kind of building block by which all of this has to happen. And again,
Yeah.
going back to saying no, it's not all data is good data, presumably. You might be collecting stuff that does not actually help you move towards your values or to your goals. And equally, you might not be sufficiently storing or reporting on the right metrics. So is that part of your sort of process early on when you're engaging?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes we don't change systems until we understand what they store and what data is useful. An example, CFO asked us, a nonprofit CFO asked one of, like us, and one of our colleagues went into the details to surface what kind of donors and funds and donations they had. And a huge impactful insight was that their donor's lifetime is just 2 years. So they donate a small amount, they might donate another amount in another year, and then they disappear. So this is a 15 plus years old nonprofit. They thought they had 15 years of loyal donors, and this is like 101 in for-profit, in corporate, or customer lifetime, customer retention, the lifetime value, but also the duration, the loyalty period, and churn, and all of these ugly words in for-profit. I love them to translate into non-profit. Okay, they are not customers, they are your donors, but they have the same emotional curve. They don't trust you. They don't even know you. Why would they trust you? Okay, so they know you. Okay, how much do they give at the beginning? Is that how much they want to give, or they are uncertain if this money will do anything or everything? Myself, I don't like to donate to some causes, although I love the cause and I would like to support diversity and inclusion, young people, education, many things. I just don't trust the execution because the data can sit somewhere and my little money won't make anything. So we surfaced these issues from data, and the CFO was really well educated, and he went back to the fundraising manager, and they had a real first staff and then a friendly discussion. What can we do? Because without knowing what we do and what is the impact, it cannot be really useful, it cannot be sustainable. So
yeah, and I think of 2 years, a 2 year churn is not good, is it? Especially if you've been around a long time, because essentially it means you're not sticky again, using commercial terms, but you're not, and people to give up their hard-earned money on a regular basis, especially now with the cost of living, that really is something. So you've got to make sure that they feel fulfilled in what they're doing, either by transferring trust or either or by giving them trust in you, and also giving them some validation in what they're doing by demonstrating through case studies and stuff like that where their money's going, I imagine.
Yes, another aspect was another story that a CEO had a software, and that CEO was in Australia. They've been doing great services for minority people in the country who immigrated with high skills. So Lan, a quantum specialist driving Uber taxi. So they picked they really hand selected what's possible, and they try to convert their qualifications and put them into internships. And they had an old system back from the US. Somehow they managed everything. And they had their system organization when we finished implementing the system, and it worked very well. So they started working with us. But there was a competitor of ours who wanted to create a new software developed completely. And they had custom built, and they quoted $1 million in a year. So half a year later, that contractor phones up our CEO and asks, "Are you ready to make the decision?" And he laughed. "Oh, sorry, we finished the project. We are live. We are collecting data. We are actually placing people from Uber back to where they belong." And that was huge. That is the profound lasting change, when I was like loving this case study, because he didn't mention us. He just said, "Thank you, we are done. We are sorted." And that's when you really see transformation happens.
And it sounds to me like you're like a good psychologist that normally talks about working their way out of a job. And it sounds a bit like that's how you work, or you move on to, I'm sure you find other things to do, but essentially you set the mission-ready organization up for success, and then give them, essentially hand over everything and give them the power to transform and then thrive.
Yes, exactly. If I can come to the next one, I just would like to show how we do that, why they want like real meaningful change, because many of the CEOs and CFOs in nonprofits unfortunately don't have the capacity and a team to deliver real data analysis. They don't have that kind of knowledge and communication and also decision making. So they have to trust something like still smoke and mirrors, like gut feel. What they don't know usually is their operation. Ideas are great, services are fantastic. They're highly qualified Uber drivers, whoever is in their community, in their impact report, they love them. So front office, fantastic. The back office, unfortunately, it's a bowl of spaghetti. I actually have a real life experience, life story there. When I was in university, we had a student exchange for a week in Turin, in Italy, north of Italy. And one of the students took us, all 20 of us, to his grandma, who lived in a small village outside of the city. And she had a long table, 3 or 4 huge bowls of spaghetti. And she gave us all the love in spaghetti. So we started eating it. And obviously we didn't know how to eat spaghetti, and there were some white shirts around. So we struggled and we were embarrassed. The Italians just laughed quietly until 3 Swedish men, or young men, students, started cutting up the spaghetti. Absolutely improper, and you can't do that in Italy. So the impact of that action was none of the Italians talked to the 3 Swedish guys for a whole week. The whole week, because it was important. But the moral of the story, if we don't know how Maori people think and culturally appreciate their food and their values, Pacific, we work a lot with Maori and Pacific people. Also, we work with some Asian and European background. Culture is important to give the promises in their own framework and their own cultural setup. And yes, the operations are messy. It's not about the problem. It's not about the person. A Swedish person didn't know how to eat pasta, spaghetti with a spoon and a fork and twirl it. So it's more about people capabilities, processes, how we do that, and then the tools we use. So I like pizza more. And yes,
Okay.
the next week we went into a huge pizzeria in Italy with the same team, and everyone was happy just easily slicing out, taking a slice. And it occurs to me, I see both in my eyes how difficult something can be and how simple something can be. So when I was in a huge project, big transformation, Europe, even in Australia and New Zealand, Fonterra, for example, spent almost 10 years there. Why something is so complex and difficult? Why do we not need to know everything up front, like a waterfall project, when the CEO and the sponsors, they don't know everything? Even if you document for 3 months, next week it occurred that life moved on. So I try to say to our customers and even who we don't have, but nurture and support, try to be a pizza, which means the crust, the base, the foundation is clear, stable, and you know your boundaries at the sides. So you know your technology is that much, and that helps everyone. Cheese at the top is very much united as well, and their their culture has to be, I think, performance oriented and rewarding success, celebrating success. And in the middle, there could be different slices of different functionality, different functional units, teams, although that image doesn't show differences, but nothing stops us to put anchovy or mushroom or pepperoni on different slices. And that is how you can be uniquely different as a fundraiser compared to a relationship manager, to finance. And I love, they usually really like this kind of visual because it's not about organic complexity, what you inherited. Figure out the structure in the future and move towards that. We like to drive real transformation. And for me, how you eat something, the experience is important as well, not just the transformation.
Yeah. What's interesting about this is that first of all, that's the second story I've ever heard about Turin. The only other story I know is, of course, about the shroud. And yeah, and the second thing is, what I have never seen digital transformation explained through the language of food before. And yeah, the pizza metaphor is really powerful because it really does. It talks about a simple structure, but the thing is that simple is not easy. That simple is not a synonym for easy. To get to simple sometimes is quite difficult.
Yes, so I see a few CEOs who go to advisors, get prompt and very specific advice or generic, but it's not applicable. We try to pull reality into the hands of the people. Even operations managers, they have so many options which one to choose, and they can't try and fail. They are not a startup. There's a board
Yeah.
who's looking after their risks. So yes, simplify. I think simplification is the new luxury. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think it makes. I think a lot of it is about understanding what you need to know and when you need to know it. Because if you take your spaghetti metaphor there, essentially that's trying to eat the whole elephant all at once. To horribly mix metaphors here, but you're trying to ingest all the information, and no one in their individual roles. Not only is it not helpful to them, it's not necessary, and it actually just you get scope creep and mission creep when all of that starts happening because people are just so overwhelmed. So to keep things really simple, all of the great leaders that I've experienced and follow, they always have a great way of kind of laddering it back up to a simple idea. I used to work for Dave Clark, who's a famous designer in New Zealand, and he passed away a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that always stuck with me from Dave is he had one business philosophy. Well, he had a few, but the one that really he talked about all the time was great work and great service. That's all. That was the question that we had to ask ourselves, and it was the answer that we wanted to have. So, did we give great service, and did we do great work? And it was such a simple idea, but it's permeated everything that it did. Whether you're a developer or a designer or in marketing like I was, did we, hand on heart, did we finish whatever we were doing? Did we do great service or did we do great work? And I think that simplicity is sometimes it's quite obvious when you hear it, but it's very difficult to get to.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I completely agree. The other problem, which actually just addressed the simplicity. So
Yeah,
perfectly said. For us, meaningful transformation means, and our customers appreciate simplicity. So that bridge on the right is, we haven't changed the river, we haven't changed all the rocks, we haven't gone into transforming nature. We just, yeah, ugly words, minimum viable product, but the simplest, quickest way to get through the river. I think that's what kind of not missing, but disappearing from economy now, because AI can do so many variations. So let's try 17 versions. And good old traditional thinking says, what is the simplest and cheapest? Even the one-lane bridges in New Zealand, I'm still shocked how many we have after living here for 17 years. But I highly appreciate at least there is one lane.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
usually we need two lanes. It's very rare when two cars immediately, and they really have to pass. They really urgently, two pregnant women in two loud ambulance, they really have to pass, and still they can wait 2 minutes. It's not simple. And the other thing we say to visualize it, and our clients usually appreciate, you can wish for any type of car, any color, like the famous T model by Ford, as long as it's black. Only had black paint, and he marketed it like any option would be good, but the coolest is black, so everyone bought black, luckily. We actually say that you can wish for any kind of solution, any size, any color, any model, any extra, as long as it's a black Toyota Corolla. Because in reality, they just need to get their team from A to B. Boring is actually the new luxury as well, because we can make everything sexy and hyped and social media ready, but that good traditional donkeys, really, work donkeys that are not unicorns, they make impact. So simple, but absolutely reliable, what we thrive for. And I think that's what really leaders need. And the team definitely don't need a lot of features because they are hard to train and maintain and remember.
What do you think the difference is? Like, I spent a big chunk of my career in corporate, and I've been through and seen as a provider digital transformation. But what do you think the difference is between corporate and not-for-profit? What are the things that stand out to you as being quite different that someone like me who's never experienced not-for-profits, or not much anyway, what would you say the biggest difference is?
Yes, yeah, very interesting. I think for-profits become from startups to corporations to enterprises. So there is a natural evolution when you start up to speed up to scale up. It feels, and apologies for the leaders of the nonprofits, that some of the nonprofits are permanently in a startup mode. They're highly driven by external funding. Their services have to respond on grassroots changes, like in the community, in their economy. So organizations like Maori Pacific organizations have to respond on year-to-year demand and changes, and they have to reinvent themselves, and they have to communicate every year why they need that money from the partner or a funder or the donor or the grant panel. Being permanently in startup, always limited resources, always limited time, means that you have to reinvent yourself really quickly. Now, this is not the mentality in nonprofits. They think sometimes that they are stable. We have the money for a year, maybe 2 years. We have money in the bank. They have some nice reserves like assets, properties, or cash in the bank, but they have to use it sometimes because the market slips from them. The market moves on or the community moves on. So I think what is useful to recognize that government focuses on the general interest of the citizens. For-profits focus on the specific interest of the shareholders. In between, there is a huge gap, which I love serving and feeling, which is the social and environmental support. But that keeps changing because that's like the tissue, that's fascia between muscles and the skin. That is the net that connects everything. So social network, for me, social is just traditional human, but very well organized. And that's where I think nonprofits are hugely different. They have to be as fast and productive as a startup, but they would need to look like permanent organizations in the eyes of the donors, that they are reliable. It's possible. It's just a really careful balancing act. They might have an annual budget like for profits, but there's a lot of limitations where they can spend. Usually funders and grants don't like to give to operations. They want to give to delivery and services and making the impact. So frontline, that's fantastic. But without back office, how can we do front office? And that's always a balance. In for profit, you can spend as much as you want on efficiency. In a non-profit, it's almost like a negative buzzword. Efficiently for that. We don't have time for that. We just be busy.
Yeah.
And we say, okay, how about just slow down a bit and think how much slow is smooth, and smooth will be fast once you reshape how you work. So
Wow.
for example, before we change systems, we have a wow project, you just said perfectly, way of working, which is nothing to do with tools. It's just how do we prioritize? How soon do we need that? What can we sacrifice? So how to cut work into measurable scope and therefore compare what's more urgent and what's bigger. So most probably more complex and more costly.
It's funny, there's two stats that go around a lot, and I'm dubious about both of them because they're so consistent. But one of them is the one Gartner and all those other ones often quote that 70% of digital transformations fail or something like that. And it's now the same number, oddly, almost exactly the same number has been said about AI transformation.
Yes.
But regardless of that, when they do fail, of course they fail, it seems to me that it's almost never the technology that causes that to fail. It's the people and the processes that are ultimately have been neglected or misunderstood in some way. And so I think that what you're talking about with this way of working is actually getting people to understand that the tools are almost like the last thing that you need to think about, because it's really about what's your workflow, where are the friction points, and how do we smooth all of this out?
Yes, completely agree. Another example with most of our clients, like a restaurant, people love beautiful furniture, but they go to a restaurant not for the furniture, but absolutely the critical quality of any non-profit, I think, is the quality of their services. So those deliverables, yes, and transformation need to address AI or digital or whatever organization transformation. What is the core business and how little can we do repeatedly? I love that's another favorite for me. The Japanese sushi bar with 10 tables and a Michelin star.
Yeah,
30 knives. The owner for 30 years goes to the same market, hand selecting fish. So sourcing is very important. Supply chain starts from the ingredients. So good impact starts from good inputs. And I love that nowadays, you don't have to be big.
No.
But you have to be very careful, and speed is important. So he can cut with his perfectly shaped samurai knife, sushi to high quality. So quality is still important, but because E equals M times C square, M means size, not as important as C, like the speed, because if we can accelerate, that's better than growing. So I think acceleration means streamlining. It means I just have sushi for 30 years, but do it such a high quality that you are differentiated. So nonprofits, unfortunately, there's a lot of nonprofits shutting doors because they are just a version of another one, and competition is real in nonprofits as well. So we work with multiple children health foundations or charities. They go for the same donor. Like someone wants to support children, okay, which one do I give right now? The loudest, or actually you can prove the impact. So that sushi must be really expensive, but must be really good, so it deserves a Michelin star. How about having non-profits with stars, Michelin stars, or call it whatever, because quality will be permanently more important and speed than volume and size. You don't need a huge front office and back office to be great.
It's been a wild ride. I love how you've taken something which is, I'm pretty sure most people, if you're at a dinner table and you start talking about digital transformation, they'd start falling asleep somewhere between digital and transformation, right? But somehow you've made it with your elegant metaphors and the fact that it's all about not for profits, is you've made this really something powerful. If people want to get in touch with you, we'll put all your details in the show notes, and they can track you down. It's not like there are many Laszlos out there,
Yeah.
so they'll be able to find you on LinkedIn. And I always finish with one question, which is, will you come back?
Thank you for this question. I would love to come back with more success stories. And I maybe promised, or I'm just keeping no names. We love our customers and we would like to promote them. So I was even thinking, why to have our name on the t-shirt when we can have our customers' logos? You know, protecting, providing, promoting them, because Nike, they support runners who wake up at 5 a.m. in the rain and still run. We support non-profits who grow like the bamboo. They are not bigger or better than the others, but they have this beautiful short sprint to grow, then they grow again, then they grow. So how big scaffold can you build from bamboo? You've been living sometimes in Asian countries, isn't it? You know how strong bamboo could be. So that's another thing. For-profits could be a huge tree with a zillion branches. Let's be bamboo. Bamboo goes really deep in the ground and goes really high, and stage by stage sprint. We use agile, but we don't call it agile. It's just repetition. And just a simple black Toyota Corolla can take you very high. And yes, there is competition. So nonprofits are not alone. We support them, but there is competition out there. So be a great bamboo. And that's what I recommend to all nonprofit social enterprises, B Corps. Don't have to be fancy, don't have to be special. Yes, how you deliver to that sushi has to be great, but your community is interested in their impact, not in your slides, which is a funny way to say slides are useful, but only if there is a deep meaning, profound, lasting change. And bamboos could be used a zillion times. So why not be just a simple bamboo and grow tall and be proud?
Wow, on that fantastic note, I think we'd be hard pressed to finish any stronger. So thanks so much, Laz, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.